Hey everyone, it's Miss Summerlin, and I'm going to give you some intro notes about Hamlet. Alright, so with the exception of certain elements in books of the Bible, Hamlet is one of the most quoted texts, and it doesn't have any easy answers. So it's very, very problematic, and it has led to a lot of argument over the ages, and we're not going to arrive at any kind of consensus. It's going to be a debate back and forth. But good literature should do that. It should make you think, it should make you have conversations. So Hamlet does this. Hence, it's good literature. So if you break down the play, there are 5 acts in a play. That's just Shakespeare. He has 5 acts in every play. But this one sort of breaks down weirdly. Part 1 is Act 1, very solid. Part 2, it seems like it's Act 2 and halfway into Act 4, and then there's a very weird time jump in Act 4. And then halfway through Act 4 to the end of the play is all one moment. So it's got some very odd jumps in time. And one very quick note is that something that happens in Shakespearean plays and Elizabethan drama is that the person with the highest social status is always going to speak last in a scene or an act. This is going to become very clear at the end of the play because it seems like the play ends beautifully, and then this one very important guy has this very random speech tacked on at the end because he's the most important guy. And that's because Shakespeare is writing under a monarchy who is supporting him, so you want to sort of suck up to the monarchy. Now, Hamlet is a revenge tragedy, and there's certain elements within a revenge tragedy. Sorry about that. There are certain elements within a revenge tragedy. So, for instance, you have audience clarity, reasons for a revenge. Obviously, you have to have a reason for revenge. You just don't run around saying, I'm taking revenge. You have to have a reason. There are certain elements like a complex plot. You can't just get revenge. You have to plot revenge. It has to be delicious and tasty and perfect. And then there are other things. It's got some physical horror, some torture. So you're going to see all of these things happen within Hamlet. Now, a Shakespearean tragedy has to have a tragic hero. And if you remember from a long time ago, a tragic hero has a tragic flaw. It is usually in a position of power. So Hamlet is a prince. He has a tragic flaw. What that flaw is debatable. You get to decide what you think Hamlet's problem is. We call that tragic flaw hamartia. Oftentimes there is a reversal of fortune. It seems like everything is going right, and then suddenly, quick 180, everything goes wrong. Anarosis is a recognition of, like a painful recognition of a moment. It's like a light bulb goes on over your head, but it's usually at the very worst possible moment. Catharsis is this outpouring of emotion. And then at the end of a tragedy, you have to have a restoration of the social order. No monarch, no dictator, no ruler in their right mind is going to let a play or a movie or anything suggest that people would be fine without a ruler or a dictator or a monarch. They want to reestablish the social order that makes sure that they have a position of power. So at the end of a Shakespeare play, at the end of anything written under a dictator or a monarch, it's going to suggest that, hey, maybe we need to have a king, so kings are good. Yay, let's make sure we have a king. So you're going to see that in the denouement. In a revenge tragedy, you have to make sure that the murder is justifiable. There has to be a good reason. We have to sympathize with the character who seeks revenge. We have to feel for him. We have to like him. Sometimes we become concerned about that character if that character seems to cross the line or gets a little weird or maybe too obsessed. And we are oftentimes faced with losing sympathy for that avenger. So it's not so much about us watching this character get revenge, it's about us watching this character deal with what revenge does to him or makes him do. Now, one of the things is that the ghost says, Hamlet, revenge my murder, and Hamlet says, okay, and then you have months and months and months and months of play. So why does Hamlet take so long? He should just walk in there and kill his uncle and be done with it. But he doesn't. He vows revenge as soon as he hears the news. Now, some people say he doesn't delay. He does vow revenge as soon as he hears the news. But then some people say he doesn't delay, but he does. He's constantly dogging himself to get on with it, to do it, to move forward, and he finds excuses not to, and it takes him many, many weeks, perhaps even months, to get anywhere with his plan. Um, and so attempts to deal with that question are one of the major arguments that surround Hamlet. Like, why does it take him so long? What does this say? What does this mean? Why does that matter? Um, Now, Hamlet does talk about being incredibly guilty. He feels bad for this revenge plot. He feels bad that he's not doing what his father wants him to do. He feels bad that he has to do it. He feels guilty about his mother. He feels guilty about his friends. Like, sorry. But so some interpretations say that there is no delay, that he does what he has to do is very complicated. He does it as quickly as he can possibly do it. It just takes him time. Um, some people say that there's a good reason for delay, that maybe he wants to make sure that he's doing the right thing before he acts. But all of those ideas sort of fall apart in some of the soliloquies. One of them we're going to look at, the I unpack my heart with words soliloquy. Hamlet seems to be suggesting that he knows he's not moving fast enough, and he is disappointed with himself. And one of the main reasons that we like Hamlet is that he is in a very crappy position. It's not, and we're going to talk about this in class, but it's not a position that he's going to win. Like, he's pretty much doomed. Does he commit murder for his father? Does he ignore his father and then fail to obey? There are several commandments there that Hamlet is sort of battling with. Now, Hamlet is very much guilty of doublespeak. He is a compulsive talker. And so there's this question about when Hamlet says something, does he actually mean it? Or is he just playing with language? He uses language and words like weapons. You'll see this in the play, that he speaks more than any other Shakespearean character, and he confuses people, and he insults people, and he makes them all dance to his tune because he is so good with words. So be very careful about listening to Hamlet, because he can be very tricky. He can be very manipulative. But his language is key to his character, and when he is alone in his soliloquies, he's going to be completely honest. He's going to tell you what's bothering him. He's going to be trying to work through his very powerful emotions. And he seems to use language when he's with people. He seems to use language as not only just a weapon to hurt them, but as a shield to distance him from them. Because you have to realize that Hamlet doesn't know how far this plot has gone. To him, Hamlet thinks everybody could be involved, or it could just be his uncle. So he is living in a place where potentially everyone is against him. So he is incredibly isolated and depressed, even more than he was at the beginning of the play. And he uses, the only thing that he's really good at is words. It does mean that he lashes out verbally many times. He uses a lot of sexual or revolting imagery and language, especially with his mother and his girlfriend Ophelia. And so he pushes them away. So this really bombastic language actually forces people to step away from him. So he is successful in getting a little bit of room to breathe. He does often use a lot of slang words and puns. So be very careful about what Hamlet says. He probably is being funny, and sarcastic. One of the things I do want you to remember and think about is this idea of a Machiavellian villain. We get this term from a book called The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. He was Italian, and he was really writing about government and how to run a city-state appropriately in in ways that work and are valuable and we still employ, and also in ways that we would look at as unethical or dishonest, like in causing your population to want or need you or be dependent upon you, keeps you in charge. So a lot of people have adopted Machiavelli's ideas in a very negative way, but the book itself is not negative. It just means somebody who is crafty and will do whatever they need to get where they have to get, which can be bad, but is also sometimes very necessary. So a Machiavellian villain is very plotty, is very conniving, is very deceptive, and I think you can argue that there are two Machiavellian villains in this play. Claudius is definitely one of them because he has been super sneaky and nasty. So I'm going to skip some of this. But I'm going to leave it up here so in case you want to pause the screen and go over it, this sort of talks about Machiavellianism a little bit more clearly. And also, sorry ladies, but women don't matter much. We're pawns. That's how life is. One thing to keep in mind is this idea of appearance versus reality. People in this world seem to have two faces. Claudius definitely has two faces. Hamlet himself develops two faces. Polonius very much appears to be an idiot, but sometimes stumbles upon things that are smart sounding, so he's either a lucky idiot or he is Machiavellian. You've got Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, who seem shady at times, but then idiotic at other times. It seems almost like everybody is playing a role, and in my own opinion, I think Horatio is the only one that seems honest and down to earth. He's my favorite. I love Horatio. I'm going to skip this, but this talks a little bit about Hamlet's relationship with his home and sort of how he seems dissatisfied and unhappy. And so there are three possibilities for why Hamlet feels so unhappy, and those are those three that are down there. Now, this is a concept that is important. This is the idea of Elizabethan worldview. They had the Great Chain of Being, which is inherited from medieval Christianity, in that at the top of the ladder is God, then below him is his angels, then below that is man, and then below that is plants and animals, because in the Bible it says that God gave Adam dominion over plants and animals, and sort of angels are there in the middle acting as intermediaries. Well, this was sort of developed into a type of government almost with this monarchy and called divine right. It was this idea that, and you've heard about this in history, it was this idea that God placed the king in his position of power, so if you were rebelling against the king, you were really rebelling against God. It's very handy to say that because then that keeps everybody on the lower social orders from rebelling against the king, even if the king is doing things that seem unscrupulous. But in Elizabethan worldview, it was sort of rumored that if you broke this chain, if you broke this divine hierarchy, that unnatural things would happen. You see this in Macbeth. If you ever read Macbeth, when the king is killed, horses eat horses, there's an earthquake, there's a sudden solar eclipse, like things go wrong quickly to sort of indicate God's unhappiness. So when a king is killed, you have to, or when a king is murdered, there has to be payback. There has to be a righting of this wrong. So that's one of the things that Hamlet is trying to do. He's trying to right this wrong. The murder of a king has to be avenged. And so crazy things happen in Hamlet. There's ghosts and meteor showers and strange sights, sort of unnatural stuff, because a king has been killed. This is a little note on pronouns. I know that the these and the thys and the thines and the ye's sort of get to you, but don't let them. They're just a pronoun. It's just you and your, me and mine. So don't freak out about it. So here are some things if you want to pause and look at what they mean. Here's some more things if you want to pause to see and look what they mean. Shakespeare is going to write in blank verse. It is unrhymed iambic pentameter. So the upper class speak in this blank verse. The lower class speak in just non-rhythmic prose. So the upper class speaks in sort of this fancy way and the lower class speak in a non-fancy way. And Hamlet uses everything. He'll rhyme, he'll use blank verse, he'll use prose, because he is a master manipulator. He's a chameleon. He fits in everywhere. But his soliloquies are in iambic pentameter because he is still elite. He is still a part of the upper class. Here's some images that you're going to be looking for in Shakespeare in Hamlet. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to go through the rest of this very quickly. Here's some stuff about iambic pentameter.